Welcome back. You
Welcome
tuned
back.
into
You tuned
Inspired
into Inspired
Afternoons with me,
Afternoons
your
with
host,
me, your
Mariam
host,
Mia.
Mariam Mia.
And now
And now
moving on to
moving
our
on.
Did You Know segment. And on I have with me, joining me, I've got Najeeb Fazli from Forsmay Butchery. And Najeeb is third generation in his family now in the family business, and which was established in Forsmay Butchery was established in 1979. So that was a very, very long time ago. I mean, I was just very young when the butcher was established. And they stockers of quality meat and meat products, including Wagyu beef, Angus beef, Karoo lamb. So that's where my focus is today, on all these different variants of the beef, because I think things must have evolved. Najeeb is now third generation, so his grandfather started the
Started
butchery,
the butchery,
and I'm
and
sure
I'm sure
those
those
time,
time,
I don't know if
I
Wagyu
don't know
beef
if
was
Wagyu
around
beef.
that time, and Angus beef and all these fancy cuts, because it was, for me, in those days, it was standard. Either I know topside steak, rump steak, and fillet steak. So that was all when I was growing up. I mean, that's the cuts we ate when it came to beef. But today, if you visit Forsmay Butchery, there's a dedicated section of prime cuts in beef, but even the other cuts are making its mark. So that's why in the Did You Know section, I thought, you know what, we need to know our meat and discuss the upper cut as well as the lower cuts of the meat. So to educate us in this, I'd like to welcome Najeeb Fazli. Assalamu alaikum and welcome
Alaikum
to
and
Salam
welcome
Media
to
and
Salam
Inspired
Media and Inspired
Afternoons.
Afternoons.
Najeeb.
Walaikum
Najeeb.
salam. Walaikum salam. It's a pleasure to be here, Mariam. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
So
tell me
tell
something
me something.
of late. So Wagyu beef. What is the origins of the of Wagyu beef in it? Because I see it's making headlines everywhere, and also then I know it's a very uppercut, and also it will break your budget a bit if you want to indulge or have a Wagyu meal or Wagyu burger or that. So let's just get into it. Let's discuss this before we get into it. So tell us a little bit more about Wagyu beef.
Yes, indeed. It will definitely, it should break your budget a bit. The thing with Wagyu beef is that it's more of a premium meat. There's Wagyu and Angus. It's a more premium meat. It's more for the occasion. So to say, Wagyu, the actual meaning, the direct translation means Wagyu is just Japanese cow, and that's pretty in the name. So it means that it's just cattle that comes from Japan. It's bred and made in Japan. Obviously now it's become more common around South Africa, Australia, many other parts of the world. Wagyu is now becoming a very big delicacy. People are really enjoying. It's special for its marbling qualities. It has a higher level of marbling qualities compared to any other meat. That means the marbling is just fat that runs through the meat. It's a special kind of fat. It's special because the fat the fat is not like normal fat because it runs through and it has a very low melting point. The melting point averages between 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. That means what happens is the fat melts into the meat, creating a rich, juicy texture and flavor, sort of a buttery flavor to it. Yeah.
Okay, so I need to ask you. So these cows are now bred in South Africa. I suppose farmers have now gone into Wagyu breeding. So you said it's a different type of a cow, and so I'm sure also in terms of their diet will be different in terms of what we feed, what the cattle are fed, so that these lines of fat or this marbling can occur in the body. So now, do we get, is our Wagyu now locally sourced, or do they import? How does it work in terms of the South
Of
African
the South
halal market?
African halal.
Okay, so the way it works is that now in South Africa, the way it works is the embryos come from Japan, the embryos of the cattle, and they born and raised in South Africa now. Now, obviously, with generations, it's now it's already settled here. In terms of feeding, the feeding is pretty much the same as normal cattle. The only difference is the actual meat is different. And it can't be, it's not kept in like closed environments. The whole point of Wagyu is the animals are not meant to be stressed. They need to be very calm and they relaxed animals. So therefore, most of the cattle, Wagyu cattle in South Africa, are open spaced and have free reign to do, yeah. And basically, so they're not stressed out at any moment.
So is it, so then can I concur that actually Wagyu beef is organic and free range, because you say they're roaming, they're not stressed, their diet is us, they're not kept in pens and it. So can we assume that Wagyu beef is then eating a free range cut as well?
100%. 100% exactly. It is free range organic meat. Obviously, they grain fed. They fed on their own time. They eat more generally than other normal cattle. Uh, and yeah, in just in general, the body types are a bit more bigger due to Japan being the weather being very cold and that they're very big, so they have thick layers of fat and body fat to keep them insulated. Therefore, the meat itself has a lot more fat.
So I think,
So
and
I
then
think, and then
in the Wagyu, because it's a cattle, so you'll get all the cuts. We are going to move on to the different cuts on cattle, but now let's just move, before we go there, let's just move to Angus, and then we can go on the different cuts you get on a cow. So Angus, now tell us about the Angus cow.
Right. So okay, so Angus, similar to Wagyu, Angus is even known for its higher marbling qualities. But the difference is Angus comes from Scotland. It's a Scottish bred cow. Uh, Same thing here. The cow, because of Scotland's harsh winters, they have a thick layer of fat, body fat, that keeps them insulated, keeps them warm during the cold seasons. Therefore, Angus meat has more marbling quality than normal meat. Same thing with Wagyu. They are now bred in South Africa. The embryos came from Scotland and now they're bred here.
Is
is
actually
actually
an overseas import, like you said, imported from Scotland. So Wagyu, I did research regarding coming from Japan, and that's where it was made famous. And I think there was a very famous Iron Chef Marimoto, on that Iron Chef program that actually introduced the world to Wagyu, I think a couple of years ago. But strangely, and I mean, I've learned something today, that Angus is actually from Scotland. And then, okay, so now that we understand this Wagyu in Angus is a variant of a cattle and especially bred, is Angus as well is allowed to roam freely and has a diet, and that they're not kept in pens. So could we regard Angus as free range and organic as well?
Yes, Angus is also free range. Basically, the whole point of these cattle is not necessarily to say that they're not kept in pens, they're not kept here. They obviously have to be kept in a closed environment, so obviously so they have control. But the main thing is that they constantly check. They constantly have people monitoring them, seeing if anyone is stressed. So basically, the whole point is these cattle are not stressed at all. Therefore, their bodies, their body meat is a lot more tender, a lot more soft, because they barely having any stress. Because the stress releases hormones that sort of make the meat more firm, more obviously making it more hard. So the more they stress, the more tougher, sort of to say, the meat will become. And yeah, that's why they constantly monitor to see that none of the cattle are stressed, none of them are being forced to do anything they're not. And yeah.
Tender. So when we're eating it, you're enjoying a tender, melt in your mouth piece of beef. Najeeb, now let's go on to different cuts, because the traditional cut of the ram, the top side, the fillet, we're familiar. But now I see butchers and people are advertising, even when you go to restaurants, you offer different variety of cuts that we didn't hear: tomahawk, prime rib, skirt steak, just to name a few variants. So, what are these variants? Or were they all a sirloin? Were they always around, and just a new name is given to them? Oh, I know T-bone we aware of, and we know about T-bone, but tomahawk, and what is the difference? And also, when it says it's age matured, what do we mean by that? So I've given you a loaded question. We can go slowly, and we can just discuss each cut and also the age meat.
Okay, yes. So, firstly, to start off, let's say that these cuts have always been around. The names, there are few different names, sort of. Different countries have different names for it, but in general, it's the same principle, the same cut, the same everything. Uh, the normal stuff is the normal cuts that people generally like is your top side, your silver side sort of people like. The more tender ones are the rump, sirloin, fillet. Obviously, fillet's the best. But all of these other cuts, it's now becoming more well known. Uh, what tomahawk is just, it's actually from the forequarter of a cow. So it's something a bit different. It's basically, if you've heard of ribeye, all that it is ribeye on a bone. That's all that it is. So it comes from the wing rib part of the cow. It's known as the wing rib part. It's just above the hind quarter part, and it's around that area uh, of the cow. And basically, it's ribeye is one of the most tender meat available. A lot of people don't know that. People generally, obviously, fillet is the best. It will always be the best. But ribeye is actually second. Ribeye is a very tender piece. Ribeye meaning it comes even from the name because you don't get a lot from the cow itself, from the carcass, and the meat itself is very tender. Also because it has quite a bit of marbling. It has some marbling qualities, and it has a sort of eye piece of fat, given the name ribeye. Tomahawk is just that same ribeye, except now the bone is on, so it's with the bone. Uh, in terms of T-bone in all of these other different meats, it's the same. It's the same thing. T-bone is just sirloin steak on a bone. T-bone is just sirloin with the fillet on the bone. That's all that it is. I know in America in that it's known as a porterhouse steak. It's just different names for different cuts. Uh, yeah, the best meat, obviously, like I said, is the fillet steak. It's going to be the best steak. Afterwards, I really like my ribeye steak. Personally, I prefer ribeye. You're getting a bigger piece of meat, and I just enjoy the fat. So you're getting a lot more fat compared to the other meats.
Okay, I've learned a lot now. So basically, the tomahawk is just what I love, the ribeye, but just getting fancy, and so it would be nice probably on the coals or something like that, because then you've got that bone to eat when you're chewing it and that. And then, like you said, I didn't realize that sirloin is a T-bone and sirloin are actually one and the same thing, minus the bone. Okay, and then and also that porterhouse steak, because many time you visit a restaurant, especially like you say, if it's a franchise that is coming from America or America based theme franchise, they always offer porterhouse steak. So basically sirloin there again. So I've learned something there as well. Now tell me, before we discuss ways of preparing beef in terms of how to cook it, because I know many of us, we overcook it and it's so optimal cooking. What is a skirt steak?
Okay, so a skirt steak it's just like I'm saying, another name for the four-quarter meat. It's just another name, American name, like the same thing as you said, a porterhouse. Basically, it's just like brisket and chuck in it, sort of that meat. In terms of preparation, steaks, it's steak in general, beef. is a very versatile meat. It's very versatile. It's not like chicken. It's not like lamb. Uh, that being said, the reason why is the different cuts. There is so much you can do with it. For example, fillet we know is the most tender. It's a very soft steak. So generally people like that to have on a braai. You put it on a braai with a marinade, whatever it is, you're getting a very lovely steak. Uh, Rump sirloin, same thing, perfect on a braai. It's very soft, very tender. The other meats, brisket, as you said, skirt steak, brisket, and that it's not well known because it's a four-quarter meat, so it's less premium meat. It's a less premium, so it's a more
Just to
affordable
come
meat.
in there, more your economical cut.
Yes,
Mhm.
100%. So brisket and chuck is your more economical cut. The four-quarter meats are generally more economical, but it's not to say that it's not tender. Brisket and chuck is actually because it has a bone and quite a bit of body fat, not necessarily marbling. The meat is very juicy. It's very juicy, so it's a bit less tender, but it's a juicy meat. And that's why with steak in it, I personally prefer having my steaks whenever I do my steaks, I have mine medium to well. I never ever have it well done. That's just personal preference. Like I'm saying, most people I know have well done. You put your masalas, everything on. I personally don't. I just use salt and pepper. That's about it.
Okay, so I've learned so much. Actually, I'm salivating now. I'm actually feeling for, and I think it's a good day. It's a good winter's day for a nice, well, like you say, medium rare, but a good piece of meat and a good piece of steak. So what you're saying, if you keep it to the minimal in terms of marination, then you can actually get the flavor and the taste of the meat and also the texture in terms of its softness. And like you say, if you choose one of the uppercuts, so to speak, an Angus variant or Wagyu variant, then you're going to get the soft melt in your mouth, almost buttery taste of a fillet.
Yes, 100%. So the thing with Wagyu and Angus, it's the exact same cut you get in normal meat you're gonna get in Wagyu. It's the exact same thing. That, like I'm saying, the only difference is the marbling. In terms of preparation for any steak, you can do it in so many different ways. Like for example, at Forsmay Butchery now we're having a special on our beef stew. That's just it's our chicken brisket. It's lovely beef stew, bones with fat. People love it for winter. Beef stew, obviously, it's a lovely winter dish when it's cold. Now, since it's so cold outside, people are enjoying that. So we're having a special on it for 79.99 per kilo on our beef stew. The thing is, with any beef now, the meat it's very warm. It's lovely for many different things. What I like to do is the reason why I enjoy tasting the meat. So whenever I have a steak at home, I'll take maybe a nice thick piece of fillet, or I have Wagyu. Whenever I have Wagyu, the thing is you never ever ever it's not recommended to do well done. You're not supposed to do it well done. And the whole point is to have a minimum sort of masalas, sort of spices to say, because I know with our culture, generally everyone likes to have it well done with a lot of garlic, ginger, masalas, all of that. The whole point of these cuts and the premium cuts of meat and all of that, the Angus and the Wagyu specifically, is that you taste the meat. The meat itself has its own texture, its own flavor, its own taste. Uh, that when you add in this masalas in all of that, you just sort of taking away from it. The actual preparation way to do Wagyu and Angus is, or any steak for that matter, if you want to have it like, with just minimum sort of things, the first mistake a lot of people make is that they put it on straight from the fridge. You never ever do that. The first thing you need to do is you take it out from your fridge, freezer, whatever it is. Uh, if it's from the freezer, you defrost it. But the main thing is the meat must be room temperature first. Then you just baste it with olive oil, sprinkle lightly salt and pepper, and then just put it on either on a pan or on a fire. You can do it either way. Uh, with Depending on the cut, the size of thickness will differ in your time and also how you want it done. So you get rare, medium to well, or well done. Uh, Depending on that and how you like it, it will be different sort of timings. You have to time your meat differently.
Okay, this has been fascinating. This room temperature one is actually something I didn't know, because even once I wash it and let it drain and then I lightly marinate it, it's always normally from the fridge into your skillet or onto the braai. I see you nodding your head there. Then you better come home and braai for us and teach us the right way to braai, because I've been doing that. So now I'm going to avoid that cardinal sin. I'm going to remember Najeeb. Always we're going to take it out maybe half an hour to 20 minutes before allow it, especially in winter. Summer it's fine, 10-15 minutes would be okay because it's hot, but in winter, like you say, it's important that you take it out in advance. And then another thing is, this is from watching, I think, many of the food channel programs, and that your beef, especially when you're doing it on a skillet or a braai, you need to let it rest for maybe a minute or two. Is that important?
Yes, that is probably the most important thing. The way I'll start over from the top if you don't mind. I'll just give you a basic preparation sort of thing. The way I do mine at home. So whenever I take steak, I like to have mine minimum, less masalas, no sort of spices, barely anything on it, just salt, pepper, just to taste the meat. What I do is I take it out, leave it for 30 minutes, a general time, just to get it to room temperature. Then you baste it. You baste both sides of the meat of the steak, whatever you're taking, the
Mhm.
steak with olive oil. You never ever put any overpowering oil, just olive oil or vegetable oil. That's it. You baste it. You sprinkle your salt and pepper, and then you just take it straight from there, and you put it depending on how you want your steak. You generally always use a high temperature. Your temperature should be high. A good way to test it on a pan is the moment you take little water and you throw it in. The moment the water must just like sort of become droplets and evaporate, then you know your temperature is right. On a fire, if you hold your hand directly over the thing for, generally I do it for about 7 seconds or so, then you know your fire is right. For other meats like chops and chicken on a fire, you hold your hand over the fire for about 10 seconds minimum. That's what they say. So it cooks it nicely, so it cooks it right through. The reason why with beef, with steak, is you leave it for a bit higher, is because you don't want to cook it right through. You don't want to have a well done steak. Generally, that's personal preference. A lot of people do like it. So obviously it depends on what you prefer. You're gonna need to base it on your temperature. The moment that's done, once you put it on, generally a steak, depending on what cut you're taking, what marbling qualities, whatever it is, what the tenderness, the flavor profile, it all differs in time. Wagyu generally maximum is about 8 minutes for Wagyu. Angus is about 10 minutes or so. Other cuts of meat even about 10 minutes, 10, 11 minutes, not more. Obviously, depending on the thickness, like I said in the start, the main thing is the thickness and how you want it. Uh, Straight after that, the most important thing what you do is you take it straight off the grid. You don't eat it. You take it and what I do is I wrap it in foil and I put it in the oven, just in the oven for a few minutes, just to keep it warm. You generally let the meat rest for about 10 minutes before eating it. Not even 3 minutes, about 10 minutes. What that does is the the meat sort of it absorbs all of the flavor. Whatever spice you add, it absorbs into the meat. It infuses into it. So you're getting a pure meat taste with just a little bit of spice, whatever you added. Uh, and that's about it. You leave it for 10 minutes and it must be in a warm place. And yeah, afterwards it's ready to eat. And another important thing is with steak specifically, you eat it straight away when it's hot. It's the best time to eat it. You don't leave it, in the fridge. You want it cooked. You shouldn't. Obviously, there's nothing wrong in doing that. You leave it in the fridge or whatever. But the thing is, when you leave it in the fridge, it becomes more chewy, more hard, and a bit less tender. The best way to have it is straight when it's hot, straight from the fire.
you were we stopped where you were giving us. You said we're putting now the piece of beef on the coals or on the braai, and then how many minutes each side? You were saying basting with a good oil, like an olive oil or a sunflower oil, not a very strong oil. Let's pick up the conversation.
Yes, well, yes, exactly. So, like I said when we were there, you never base it with anything overpowering the meat. You want to taste the flavor of the meat. After that, what you should do is you put it on the fire. Depending on the cut of meat, whatever you're taking, like I said, Wagyu, Angus, normal meat, whatever it is, and depending on how thick the meat is and how you want it done, you're going to adjust your timing. The flame of the fire should generally be the same, always. And in terms of turning your meat, whenever it's on a fire, with Wagyu and Angus, what people like to do is people prefer to turn it constantly. A lot of people don't notice. But with other meats like your chops, your chicken fillet, and your normal steaks, you don't want to constantly turn it. You want to just leave it on the fire, get it nice, and straight after that, from the fire or from the pan, whatever it is you're doing it in, you take your steak out, whatever, and what I like to do is you wrap it in foil and you have to warm it. You have to keep it warm. So you keep it warm and you have to leave it to rest for about 10 minutes. Minimum is about 10 minutes to leave it to rest. It's very important to leave it to rest. What that does is it infuses the flavor in the whatever spices you added to the meat, it infuses it into the meat. Leaving it to rest is a very important and crucial step in any good steak. Yeah.
Okay, so I now we know I didn't do that part. So the two things, I left it to rest maybe for a minute or two. So I'm sure the next time I prepare a nice cut of beef, I'm gonna think of you. It's gonna take taste differently. I assume I'm gonna get the taste because I'm gonna take it out, leave it for a while until it reaches room temperature, and then, like you say, take it in a foil, leave it to rest there 10 minutes, and then are we going to have a good like a steakhouse steak can go. Before I let you go, there was just one more thing in my did you know, so that we all know now. Mature steaks. Tell us what is the difference and what is age mature steak, and is the difference. Why would we want to purchase an age mature steak, and what do you do when you age mature a steak?
Okay, yes. So in terms of aging steak, aged steak, there's two different types. There's wet aging and dry aging. Wet aging is not really doing anything to the meat. It's just people believe it makes it more tender. What that is basically is you're taking a whole primal cut, so basically a whole rump, a whole sirloin, whatever it is, leaving it in a vacuum bag and just putting it in the fridge. Basically, what that does is the blood drains into the bag and it like sort of goes into the meat. Uh, that's about it. Dry aging is a more complex process, and it's a lot more rewarding in terms of your flavor and your tenderness. What dry aging is you have to have a special way. There's a special way to do it, and a lot of other things to do. At Forsmay, we take pride in our quality. Therefore, we are one of the only butchers to have. We have a special imported dry aging cabinet. If you come into our store, you'll see it. What dry aging does is you're draining the meat. You're draining all of the blood from the meat. So your meat is all of the moisture is taken out. But the cabinet itself, that you put it in, has to be in a controlled environment to reduce mold. So the cabinet has its own moisture and its own things in it. And you also add like certain things into the cabinet, so it infuses like flavors into the meat. With dry aging, you generally always you have to put meat in with a bone. Reason being is the bone actually has juices. And when you dry age the meat, that juices absorb into the meat, creating a completely different flavor profile and making the meat a lot more tender, 10 times more tender. You also lose from the weight loss because of the blood loss, and also you have to trim the edges out. But the meat itself is extremely tender, a very different style of having anything. any meat. It's completely different. It's a complete different taste to any meat, and it's a lot more tender than normal meat. A lot more tender.
So another thing I'm taking out from this discussion we're having and you educating us on beef and different cuts and how to prepare is the thing about beef is we're going for tenderness. So whatever you do in beef, the operative word is that you enjoy a succulent, tender, melt in your mouth piece of meat that is flavorsome. Have I understood this? Do I pass your masterclass?
100%. The most important thing is your tenderness and your juiciness and the flavor profile of any steak. All steaks have a complete different flavor profile that is meant to be enjoyed. So it's not necessarily to say that with all masalas and all of that, you sort of taking away from it, which you are. It's a different style in the way you want to have it. You can have it with your marinade. We have marinated steaks. We have a whole range. Marinated briskets, chuck, whatever it is you're looking for. All of them are very good for the thing, for braai, for pan frying, for anything. But the main thing is your tenderness and your juiciness. And that's why the main thing in steak is you must know your beef and what you're getting. So therefore, with us, we only keep A-grade meat. So even our normal meat, you'll find marbling on it, and you'll find that same tenderness more than any other normal meat.
It's been an experience, in fact, and just listening to you after that, it taught me that, when you're eating your food, it needs to be an experience. You need to go on a journey. You need to sit down and you need to savor that experience and you need to eat for enjoyment, cherishing every mouthful. Just have this burst of flavor and taste and it must be pleasurable. So it needs to be an experience to enjoy it, because I think that's what happens. We spend so much time preparing a meal and then we just like gulp it down with the steak because of the care that's taken in the aging process, if you choose that way to go, or cutting it, and the respect that it's done in terms of how the cattle are grown and that. So I think you owe it to the piece of steak to, after you've prepared it, you've let it rested in it, to sit down and to savor every bite.
100%. That is perfectly correct.
Okay. I so loved enjoying this masterclass of Did You Know? I've learned a lot. So have my listeners. We've been educated in terms of everything beef, and we're going to take a visit. And maybe the next time I come in, I'd like to have a look at that dry aging compartment that you have. It will be interesting to have a look in terms of increasing our knowledge in that. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and you've explained it so well for us. It was eloquent in terms of your explanation, and for us to understand and be educated in terms of the world of beef. And now we understand the uppercut, and now we know, thanks to Najeeb Fazli from Forsmay Butchery. Shukran for coming on and educating us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to be discussing the emotional trauma related to COVID-19. La, 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 la. How did we get so far from roads with no toll to a city that's bursting with life and voices? And